Okay, so we've talked about good areas in Pokemon, we've talked about bad areas in Pokemon, but what areas are just straight up weird? Every Pokemon region seems to have at least one that either doesn't have much of a purpose, or the reason for existing is just kinda odd or abstract. So good morning everybody, good morning, it's JPR, and today I'm gonna be doing my best to explain the lore behind some of these weird locations in Pokemon. But before we jump into that, I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, WebNovel. WebNovel is a platform filled to the brim with excellent fantasy literature. As a Pokemon and anime fan, it's right up my alley, and I'm sure it'll be great for you too. I've also got a great recommendation for you, The First Legendary Beast Master. A book that takes the idea of beast taming, like in Pokemon, and fleshes it out in a new and original way. Follow the story of Carl, a middle school student who awakens to his magical powers and begins a quest to tame these awesome creatures. There are tons of really neat and unique creatures in this novel that are sure to spark your imagination. Carl also has a really cool arc that follows him from youth to adulthood, which makes it a great read for fantasy fans of all ages. And on the WebNovel app, you can discover more great original stories just like this one, and even comics and manga. You can even tune the app to your interests to make discovering new books and comics extremely easy. If that interests you, then be sure to use my link in the description down below to download the WebNovel app today and get reading even while you're on the go. There are thousands of wonderful stories waiting for you just like the first legendary Beast Master, so don't wait. Thank you WebNovel for sponsoring, let's get back to the video. Alright, so most of the areas in the Kanto region are pretty straightforward and well explained within the games. But if we just migrate down to the Sevi Islands from Fire Red and Leaf Green, there is no shortage of strange locations that feel like they barely serve a purpose. Like the Tenobi Key and Tenobi Chambers, but those are just unknown locations, so they're as pointless as any other unknown location. Is anyone keeping track of my unknown hatred throughout these videos? Unfortunately, most of these odd locations seem to only serve the purpose of catching a few new Johto Pokemon at a time, like the Pattern Bush on Six Island. A small forest area where the grass is arranged to look like the Nazca lines or crop circles, making you think there could be alien activity happening here, but it's just a place for you to catch a Ladybug, Spinarak, and Heracross. One slightly more intriguing area from Five Island is the Lost Cave, a reference to the Lost Woods from the Legend of Zelda series, and functions very similarly to the woods in Ocarina of Time, where a wrong turn returns the player to the first room in the cave. The number of rocks in each room corresponds to the position of those numbers on a clock, guiding you through the cave. Completing the Lost Caves puzzle allows you to find and battle Lady Selphie, who you can steal 2 nuggets from using the move Thief. What? She's a lost millionaire! I may as well make this trip worth my while! It also unlocks the ability to show Selphie a Pokemon for valuable rewards later in the postgame. But Lost Cave isn't even the weirdest cave in the Sevi Islands. That honor belongs to Altering Cave, a location that also appears in Hoenn in Pokemon Emerald. Altering Cave is certainly an odd area. It exists in the isolated location of Outcast Island, has a singular room with no items, and only low-level wild Zubat spawn here. So what's the point? Well, that's the thing, Cap. There is no point. Altering Cave's entire purpose was actually scrapped in both Fire Red and Leaf Green and Emerald. It was originally meant to be tied to the mystery gift function, where one random Johto Pokemon would be placed here every time the feature was used, but this data was never publicly distributed, hence the name Altering Cave. It was meant to be a location where you could alter the Pokemon that appeared here. Do you get it? Well, you see, it's funny because the Johto region is pretty normal for the most part, sometimes dreadfully so, but Heart Gold and Soul Silver did add a couple of areas that are a bit unusual. The first of which being the Sinjoh Ruins, which, okay, I guess isn't actually in Johto, you got me. The Sinjoh Ruins are an event-exclusive location that the player is warped to from the Ruins of Alph, and was built to commemorate the connection between Unknown and Arceus. And that's it. Then Arceus shows you some Google images and whips you up a nice space egg for you to take home to the family. I get the whole point of the Unknown is to be, well, unknown, but I do kinda wish this place gave us a little bit more. Or at the very least, showed up in Legends Arceus. The only reference made to Sinjoh is in Old Verse 12, where the author just notes how similar the land of Hisui is to Sinjoh. So, snowy? The next area is the Embedded Tower, just south of the newly added Johto Safari Zone. After defeating Red, the player is able to catch Groudon or Kyogre, depending on which version they're playing, and then after trading for the other one, dang it Game Freak, you just love doing this, don't you? Professor Oak will give you the Jade Orb, which attracts Rayquaza. It's just oddly fleshed out for a post-game legendary location. Most places just put their old legendary Pokemon inside of some weird pocket dimension or something. But here we get a whole new unique location with this Jade Orb item that is never mentioned ever again, by the way. I guess the one thing I really like about the embedded tower is that they say it was built by ancient people who migrated from the Hoenn region, and if we assume that Hoenn is geographically in the same location as real-life Kyushu, then the embedded tower is actually the closest area to the Hoenn region that we know of. Speaking of Hoenn, ooh, flawless transition. Remember that altering cave I mentioned earlier whose wild Pokemon were never officially released? Well, in Emerald at least, almost all of these Pokemon just ended up being moved to the newly expanded part of Emerald Safari Zone. All that is, except for one. Smeargle, for whatever reason, would receive its own equally odd area located in the Battle Frontier of all places, Artisan Cave. And when I say Smeargle got its own location, I mean Smeargle is literally the only Pokemon encounterable here. In fact, it's the only place in all of Gen 3 where Smeargle can be caught outside of Pokemon Coliseum. This also makes Smeargle one of only 2 catchable Pokemon in the Battle Frontier, the other being the Sudowoodo who blocks the waterfall that leads to Artisan Cave. But yeah, it's just strange how large and intricate this cave is for its only purpose to be that it houses Smeargle. Almost as weird as it being within the Battle Frontier in the first place. My guess is that it's just there to assist with some of the more annoying battle facilities since you can teach Smeargle any move, making it a trump card for places with special rules like the Battle Arena and Battle Palace. Also, honorable mention to the Scorched Slab just outside of Fort Tree City. While this area was expanded into a proper dungeon where Heatran can be found in Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, in the original Hoenn games it was just an oddly named area with nothing of note but the Sunny Day TM. The reason for this is because of a similar cave existing in real-life Kyushu that claimed to be the resting place of Amaterasu, the Japanese goddess of the sun. This is further reinforced in the remakes where Charizardite Y can be found here, an item that grants Charizard the Drought ability. How clever of them. For Sinnoh's strangest area, we're going to refer to the only new area introduced in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, Romanus Park. Romanus Park replaces Pal Park in these games, since there's no longer any need for a Pokemon transfer minigame, and Romanus Park instead serves as an odd location where various legendary Pokemon can be caught. Once a slate is used inside one of the rooms, you'll be transported to the pure space to fight minor legendaries such as the birds, beasts, and the Regis, and the strange space to fight major box legendary Pokemon and Mewtwo. Though the only thing strange about the strange space is, how do we get 2 different Sinnoh games and this is the only reference to the Distortion World that we have? Like seriously, the Distortion World was an area begging to be revisited in full 3D setting like Legends Arceus or even BDSP. But here we are with a lone room being its only representation. Well, 2 rooms, I should say. There is another slightly different area outright called the Distortion Room, where you fight a level 100 shadow version of Giratina's origin form, which in itself is one of the weirder Pokemon boss fights, since you weren't able to capture this Giratina due to it being a shadow of the real Giratina that you already caught. To Game Freak's credit, they did try to expand Romanus Park a bit in Legends Arceus with the Romanus Island area found in the southern end of the Obsidian Fieldlands where Landorus is caught. Except, this island isn't even where modern-day Romanus Park is. It's actually in the location of modern-day Sinnoh Route 220. So, maybe the park is named after the island? I don't know, but all around this new edition has been handled very oddly. Hey, real quick, did you know that the subscribe button actually lights up every time I say subscribe? You should definitely go down there and check it out. Subscribe, subscribe, subscribe. Also, subscribing is free, so I would really appreciate it if you did. Thanks. The weirdest location in Unova, I have always considered to be Challenger's Cave. Yes, the Abyssal Ruins are certainly in the running as well, but at least they have a clear purpose of giving the player high-valued items and some discrete Unovan lore. Challenger's Cave, on the other hand, is literally just a training ground with a slight tease of a legendary Pokemon at the end, only for there to be no legendary Pokemon at the end. It's implied through other lore that it was likely the Swords of Justice training Keldeo here, which again is a bit odd considering that Keldeo already has 2 other locations associated with it, the Moor of Osiris and the Pledge Grove from Black 2 and White 2. I guess Challenger's Cave is just meant to be a small bit of world building and optional content for dedicated players. Some may see it as disappointing, but I guess not every cave needs to have a legendary at the bottom. And while this cave collapsed in Black 2 and White 2, another odd area was added in its place, the Nature Preserve. The Nature Preserve is an area that can only be accessed after the player has obtained the permit from Professor Juniper after seeing every Pokemon in the Unova Pokedex, with the reward for coming here being a chance to catch a shiny Haxorus. In a way, it's somewhat similar to the Sinjo Ruins, being a location far from the actual region that the player can't fly to themselves. Oddly enough, a recreation of this area complete with a wild stellar-type Haxorus exists in the terrarium in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. Or perhaps they build the terrarium around the Nature Preserve and lowered it into the sea, but that seems like a lot of extra work, so I'm going with the former, that it's just a recreation. Kalos' strangest area is one that you probably didn't even think of, the Chamber of Emptiness. Yeah, you thought I was gonna say the power plant, didn't you? I'm a mind reader like that. But yeah, the Chamber of Emptiness is literally just as the name describes, a completely empty cavern located south of Victory Road on Route 22. It contains only a Benetite and a Spooky Plate, which I guess technically makes it not empty, I suppose. Well, it will be empty for the next guy who visits, I can tell you that much. But yeah, it's a rather random spot to include in the game, and I can't really give this one much more of an explanation. But I can at least give something about the Kalos Power Plant. Okay, yeah, you got me, we're going back to this one. For years, fans speculated that one of the locked power plant doors was meant to house an unreleased Volcanion event for Pokemon Z version. But with new information that has come to light from, sources, it appears more likely that the power plant was meant to be the home of a fourth Kalos mythical Pokemon, an unreleased electric steel type codenamed as Teto, which literally means Steel Tower. Some people have interpreted this as Zeraora being meant to be a Gen 6 Pokemon, and I suppose it's possible Teto could have been an early prototype of Zeraora, but I personally think it was probably meant to be a different Pokemon entirely. And saying Zeraora was meant to be in Gen 6 is just people running wild with limited information. Also, Zeraora is literally based on the Hawaiian god of thunder, so even though it doesn't have an event location in Alola, it definitely belongs in Alola, not Kalos. Just throwing that out there. Alola's strangest area is an area that really isn't in Alola at all. Well, kinda. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon introduced all kinds of strange, distant dimensions that each harbor their own Ultra Beasts, but none is more odd and off-putting than the Ultra Ruin. Unlike the other Ultra Beasts who reside in far locations from Earth, Guzzlord instead exists in an alternate reality where all of Earth has been taken over and eaten. The Ultra Ruin is basically just a post-apocalyptic version of Hau'oli City. The music that plays here is actually a distorted and reversed version of Hau'oli City's theme. It's very spooky for Pokemon standards, I'll give it that. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon in general have some wild alternate universes, like now we know there's at least one timeline where every villain in Pokemon won because of Rainbow Rocket. Like, imagine how screwed those timelines are. Is it bad that I kinda want a game set on one of those timelines though? Within the actual region of Alola, I still have some questions about Lake of the Sun/Moon though. Prior to the wormholes from the Ultra games, this lake was the first location that connected the player to the Pokemon multiverse. As in the post-game, a wormhole appears here that will send you to a reverse world, which is basically just the opposite version that you're playing. So, Sun and Ultra Sun both lead to Moon and Ultra Moon, and vice versa. Except you can't catch version exclusives in the reverse world, which is kinda lame honestly. But you can get Cosmog by going to the other world, so hey, at least there's some purpose to it. Still, the actual purpose of the lake itself is left largely unexplained within the actual game. As for Galar, I'm gonna be honest, this region doesn't have areas that are even remotely interesting or intriguing, like maybe Balamir Lake/Dynatree Hill in the Crown Tundra? I guess the only thing strange about it is how this area tracks so many strange phenomena, like you can battle Keldeo here, you can find the Galarian bird trio munching on those big peach thingies at the tree, Spirit Tomb is found here, there's like a level 90 Dynamax Greedent you can battle at the tree, but like, it's not that mysterious, like the tree probably just grows on top of a power spot and that's all there is to it. Anyway, Galar sucks, moving on. Now for perhaps the biggest nothing burger area of the entire video, that random place with the crystallized tree in the Area Zero Underdepths. I mean hey, this place was all over the trailers and the room itself seems important. But aside from defeating a stellar Terra-typed Garganacl to progress the plot, nothing of note happens here. I at least thought maybe they'd do some sort of forbidden fruit motif with Petra being this corrupted being who emerged from the crystal tree one day. Look, I'm not saying every little thing needs to have a purpose, just look at Challenger's Cave from Black and White. But it would have been so cool if this tree at least dropped Terra Shards on a daily basis or spawned a new stellar Terra-type wild Pokemon around it each day so there's at least some reason to revisit the Underdepths. It just kinda feels like Game Freak forgot to give any areas in this region lasting value to make you wanna go back at some point. Almost everywhere in this region is just a temporary set piece to explore once and never again. And sadly, the most visually interesting place in the entire game is no exception. But hey, I'll give credit where credit is due. It at least piqued my interest more than any area in the Galar region, even though there is far less to do here. Also, honorable mention to the Crystal Pool in Kitakami. I know about the whole bizarre post-credits scene that happens here with Terapagos, but they never actually explain how the Area Zero crystals are all the way over in Kitakami. The game teases the entire time that Glamora is somehow linked to these crystals in Area Zero, and Glimmet, its pre-evolved form, is the only Pokemon that spawns both in Area Zero and at the Crystal Pool. But then, how is Glamora related to Terapagos? I'm gonna go insane! But that's gonna wrap things up for this video. Be sure to leave a like on this video if you enjoy, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and I'll see you guys next time.